showed me why. Instead of asking why, start asking why not. Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you're lying in the sun. Bit by bit, the older that we get, the faster it tick, 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 ticks. Time flies. Whoa, whoa, time flies.
Good afternoon. Time does fly here on Marshfield Old School Times, and we're happy to be back with you today on a beautiful, the last day of August. Nice day to be outside today. Glad to have someone with us today that just we're really proud of. Marshfield's own Nicki Thompson. Nicki, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
You betcha. The new high school principal at Marshfield High School, and that's quite an honor. Quite an honor to have that position, and quite a responsibility in it.
Yes, I feel that a little bit.
I'm
Yes,
sure
I
you do. We're going to get into that here in just a couple of minutes and learn a little bit more about Nicki and her history, and a little bit more about the school and what's going on. I did want to thank Logan for being here again today, our producer, and Dennis Beck for our great theme song that we opened the show with. You don't want to remind everybody that we're doing this podcast to try to document history, and Nicki and I have been going over some history of the school and the buildings here and what have you, and it just kind of jogs our memory to realize that there's a lot of history out there, a lot of stories from our forefathers and mothers and people that have came before us and built this community, built this school district. Just a lot of people to give credit for why we live in the community that we do. And I think it's always good to reflect every now and then about that as time goes on. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, had Sheriff Cole on. We talked a lot about the sheriff's department and law enforcement, and I mentioned a couple things about how drugs were so prevalent today in our society, and I think 80% of all the criminals in prison in Missouri are drug-related offenses. And as we were talking about that, we talked about today and compared to the old days, 50, 60 years ago, and how violence is increased in drug-related crimes. And I probably wasn't really clear, and I want to just clarify. They still had a lot of violence back then. And I've looked at some of the history documents, and my uncle, Sheriff Fraker, Sheriff Isom Cunningham back in the 50s. You had, all kinds of people that have served over the years, and they really have served our community so well. The firefighters, the EMTs, all the emergency folks, the police, Ken Clardy and his umpteen years as police chief. And I got to thinking about all that and how they have delivered us a phenomenal community, a phenomenal city, a phenomenal county, kept us safe all these years. And I just wanted to give credit where credit was due, because in many cases they did that with very little budget, very little help. And over the years, we've grown to where we are today in the community that we're in. And I think that kind of correlates, Nicki, with where you're at as the high school principal. We've been looking at some old documents here, and we kind of figured out maybe in the whole school back about 1916, when this building was built, there might have been 40 kids in the whole school. Today, you've got 3,000 plus. So it's pretty amazing. And just wanted to kind of touch on that and thank all those future generations for getting us where we are. And that's going to be a good start to today's show. Nicki Thompson. We always like to start, when did you come to America?
That's a small question, right? So I was born and raised here in Marshfield and spent my entire childhood here. Great childhood, involved in the Methodist Church, as you know, and lots of great memories of school and community and just being fully embedded in all of it. Yeah. So graduated in 2002 and then went to Drury for undergrad, and decided that I wanted to be back in Marshfield, and was really passionate about getting back here as a teacher. So
that's great. So you were born, your parents?
Yes.
John and Carolyn.
John and Carolyn,
Tell us
yes.
a little bit about John and Carolyn, and then you have a brother.
I do, yes.
Uh-huh.
So my dad's family goes back generations here in Marshfield. So shortly after my parents got married, he moved here, I guess, when he was a sophomore in high school, and his family was here for generations before that, and so lots of deep ties to the community. And shortly after my parents got married, they met at Drury, and after they got married, an aunt of my dad's was ready to sell the house, and she was older, couldn't take care of it any longer. And I think the legend I've heard, I don't know if this is true fully, but is that the city was interested in tearing down the house and adding parking for the square. And my parents didn't want to see that happen, and the aunt didn't want to see that happen. And so they bought the house and started a lot of repairs, a lot of work to get it to where it is today. And
I kind of remember that, and of course, for those of you that might not know, Nicki was raised in the big white house just west of the square on Washington Street. I guess that's the Foster house, right?
Right.
And John's your great aunt was Ms. Foster, and of course, when I was a kid, and the house was pretty much vacant for many years, best I recall.
Right.
I don't know when Miss Foster passed away or anything, but I know it did set vacant, and didn't look like it was in great repair in those days. And I do remember when your folks did buy it and restored the home, and it was a great day for Marshfield to see that old house saved and restored, and what a beautiful home.
That was a neat house to grow up in.
Absolutely. So your dad, John Thompson, his mother was a Foster, so the whole Foster Thompson regime, you might say, the generations of history in our community. And then your mother, tell us a little bit about your mom's and his dad, her father and mother.
So my mom grew up in Springfield, and her dad was a pediatrician for years and years and years at Smith Glen Callaway Clinic. And so lots of good memories of growing up and spending a lot of time at the clinic and hanging out with grandpa. And and then, like I said, she went to Drury after graduating from Glendale and met my dad there. She was a nursing major.
Yeah. That was Dr. Holland, and a lot of people may know Dr. Holland, and he even had him for a pediatrician. So
yeah, it's amazing the connections that you tell somebody that, oh, yeah, he was my doctor.
Right. So great, blessed to have a great family and come from two great families there. Now, Josh, tell us a little bit about Josh, your brother.
Sure. So my younger brother Josh and his wife Alexandra live here in the community and have 2 kids and 1 on the way. So the oldest just started kindergarten at Hubble, so that's exciting to watch him start in the school system and find success and be excited about school.
And Truman, the young boy, was a student of Melanie's over here at the Manchester Station Preschool. So he spent some time in this building along with his Aunt Nicki and his grandfather John.
Yes.
So that's cool. Well, always like to know a little bit of history about our guests, because that's what this show's about, is history. And so we appreciate that. So you went on, you graduated in 2002. You attended junior high in this building. Is your name up in the hallway, in the classroom up there, Mr. Fisher's class?
No.
I'll have to go check that out. Yeah.
I don't remember writing it, but that doesn't mean
we've saved a closet on the 3rd floor that is an original closet. It looks just like the building did in 1916, and one of the teachers, I think the last year or two, as it was being used for the public school, allowed the students to sign their name in the room. And so we've saved that, and a nice little piece of nostalgia. My daughter's name's in there, and some others. So
yeah, I'll have to check. I did have Mr. Fisher. So maybe
you could. I don't know when he started letting the kids do that.
Right.
You were a couple years ahead of that last class, I think.
Yes.
But, so you went on to Drury
yes.
and got your education. And let's tell us a little bit about your education. You have
Sure.
Yeah.
So I started at Drury. I thought I would be a business major, and had interest. Had worked at my dad's office through high school, and thought maybe I will help family business eventually and pursue that route. And pretty quickly realized that wasn't the path for me, but didn't really know. I had a moment over, I think it was Christmas break of my sophomore year. I got an email at late one night that said, you basically have to declare a major when you come back in the spring for spring semester. You have to commit to something. And it was just a revelation hit me. Education is it. You're going to be a teacher. And then from there, it pretty quickly fell into English was the direction. I knew that while I like little kids, that older kids were the right choice for me. And so high school was where I immediately started focusing. And then I was through all of my school careers here and at the old, new old high school, depending on which era you experience.
Right.
I had amazing English language arts teachers, and so that had always been an area that I sort of gravitated to. So when I had that revelation of I'll be a teacher, English was it. And so, in probably most people know if they're in education at all or have student taught that when you go to student teach that they recommend not going to your home district and getting other experience. And I saw the value in that, but I also was really passionate about I have to student teach with Bonnie Taylor. She had been my senior English teacher, and I knew that while there would be a lot of familiar coming back here, that I could learn and grow a lot from Bonnie, as who I placed, as this ultimate sort of English teacher mentor. So I convinced them at Drury somehow to let me come back here and student teach, and that was an incredible experience. And I knew pretty much immediately that if there's a job opening, I want to be here. Um, I was in a sorority throughout college at Drury and was in leadership there. And so my senior year, I was presented with an opportunity to be a leadership consultant for just a 1-year contract, is what it is. And you travel to, I think I went to 28 college campuses across the country. And so you do, recruitment help and facilitating workshops and just leadership development kinds of pieces. So it was a hard decision when I was offered that job in the spring of student teaching, because there was an English opening in Marshfield and I really wanted to be there. And then there was this awesome, leadership consultant opportunity that I thought this probably could be something pretty impactful. So I remember going to Jan Hibbs, who was principal at the time, and another just incredible mentor of mine. I went to her and said, "This is where I am, and I really want to be here in Marshfield." And she said, I don't think you can pass up the consultant opportunity. If it is meant for you to be in Marshfield, there will be something here when you finish that. So I took that opportunity for a year, and then that spring, as I was coming off the road, something opened in Marshfield.
There you go.
And it worked, and here we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is great. So that sounds like an experience that not everyone gets to do, and something that really did enhance your young education, huh?
Yeah, for sure. I think sorority life, Greek life gets kind of a bad rep sometimes, but it is absolutely influential in everything I do every single day. Even still, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think, oh, that's something we did in Zeta, or this is a Zeta strategy. And so I'm incredibly thankful for what that looked like. And I think the experience is a little bit different too at a small liberal arts school like Drury was. But getting to experience larger campuses, my first visit on the road was University of Iowa. So that was culture shock. Go from Drury University to University of Iowa, where the entire population of Drury student body wise was basically the number of students going through recruitment at University of Iowa. So, but yeah, that was a great experience that really was pretty in line with everything we do in education in a lot of ways. So.
That's great. I've observed most English teachers love to read.
Yes.
And I know you love to read.
I do.
Is there any favorite books or any favorite pieces of work that you would say were instrumental in your wanting to be an English teacher, or just in library for life?
So I always gravitate to Kill a Mockingbird. I think that's my ultimate, because I just think there's so much life, so to speak, in those pages. Just learning how to see people for who they really are, and not judging, and kindness, and all of the pieces. So that was my by far favorite book to teach when I was in the classroom.
All the things that we lose with social media today, seems like sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah, unfortunately.
We all, I think we're experiencing that. And social media is at its stage of life now, 10 years or 15 or whatever it is. I guess it's 15 now, probably. I think we're starting to see the weathering of that, and what it has done and can do to our society. And while there's so many good things that it has done and can do, there's some negatives too.
So, for sure. Yeah.
And that's kind of why we don't throw the books away. The manuals will still be the manuals.
Always room for books.
That's right. So you get back to Marshfield, you start your wonderful English career at Marshfield, and tell us a little bit about that and Where you've kind of came from there.
Yeah. So I loved almost every second in the classroom. You have your tough moments, but I loved it and loved teaching English. And it just was, there's nothing like that feeling of being in a classroom and fully immersed in the craft and, having discussions with students and hearing their thoughts and just the brilliance of students and what they have to offer. There's just not anything like that. So I joked always that, I'll just die in my classroom. This is what I'll do for life. This is where I'll end up. And along the way, several people had mentioned, you want to think about administration. That might be a path for you. And I said, no, I will never do that. I will always teach. I love teaching.
Yeah.
That's where it is for me. And so I got my master's in English education because that was all I wanted to do was English education. So I finished that in 2010-ish, I think. And then in 2017, I had started teaching adjunct for Drury and OTC a few years before that and doing a lot of online teaching. And so
Did
I saw.
you teach some classes in this
I
building?
did.
I thought you did. I
Yeah,
remember
we had
that.
the Marshfield campus. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that was a neat experience too.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of online teaching and I come across some email blast or something, a curriculum and instruction specialist degree through Mizzou that was an emphasis in online education and instructional technology. And I thought that would be really beneficial to help me be a stronger online teacher. So I went through that program, finished that specialist degree in 2019, December of 2019. And then we know what happened in 2020.
Oh, yeah.
A few months later, we obviously experienced COVID and that changed, as we know, so many things about our society, but especially how teachers taught. And we had to immediately pivot, was the big word through that time, right? But pivot to online platforms. So our district adopted Canvas, which is a learning management system, and Garrett Lauder, another Marshfieldian,
Right.
and Jeff Curley, principal at the time. I sat down with them and we thought about, that we kind of had already had some preliminary talks about eventually it would be neat if we had an online program within Marshfield schools. We were seeing an increase even before the pandemic of students who were pursuing online classes
Right.
and using the launch partnership and pieces like that, and thought, there's probably a need here. We could develop something in house. And so I sat down with those two and we thought about what that could look like. And that process was accelerated a little bit because of the pandemic. And so we got together a team of teachers and rolled out our online program. And I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to lead that. And so that just organically, it was in some leadership in the district and saw that there could be impact in ways beyond the classroom too, but still didn't have any intention of leaving the classroom. Was just enjoying that Marshall virtual program management and still teaching. And then through a pretty influential conversation with Dr. Lauder, I decided, I should probably go ahead and get a degree and just have it in case I ever decide I want to use it or if I feel like there's a calling to a leadership position administratively. And so I finished that specialist in educational leadership and administration, and here we are.
That's
so
awesome.
It was not the plan, but
yes. Well, you never know where life will take you,
Right.
but it's still you're still on sort of on the same path. You
yes.
just, had a little different turn than you might have thought. But well, that is awesome. Well, Nicki, it's great to see someone that we all have known grow up in our community, reach the point that you're at in life at still a very young age. It's very rewarding to see that and to know that people can work hard and we don't have to look beyond our county borders or our community to find people that are very capable of serving the community. I've always said that no one understands the culture like those that are from that culture, and I think it's important. Culture trumps strategy.
Yes.
It always
Agreed.
does. So you took this position this year, I guess. Mr. Curley had how many years was he there?
He was in the high school for 11, and then had been at the junior high before that.
Right, right. And Mr. Curley was well respected.
Oh yes.
Did a great job from what I've understood, and so you've got some big shoes to follow there.
Yes.
it's always easier to follow someone that maybe wasn't quite as liked or is quite as good a job as someone that did. So
Right.
that makes it a little tougher for you, but
Yes, it definitely
very
has.
confident for you. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. You know, in the invitation that I sent out on Facebook night before last, I think it was, whenever it was, I had mentioned that you might have been the only Marshfield person to become the high school principal, at least in modern history. Well, because I'm not as clear thinker as I should be sometimes at my age, I did miss someone.
Okay.
He's happens to be my relative.
Uh-oh.
Leroy Fraker
Uh-huh.
was a high school principal in this building in the late 60s.
Okay.
Leroy was my dad's first cousin. Um, his mother was Aunt Alpha.
Mm-hmm.
His dad was Estrel, or they called him Jack, and they lived out 38 Highway, just past Walmart on out around the corner out there. And Leroy graduated from Marshfield in 1947
Mm-hmm.
and went on and became a teacher. He taught at Stratford. He was actually a math teacher and taught. Richard McGehee was one of his students. Roy Blunt was one of his students. John Black. I think John told me that he might have not actually had him, but he was in the building when John was a student there at Stratford.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so Leroy, and then he come to Marshfield,
Mm-hmm.
taught math a couple of years, and then he was the principal for a couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
and then Mr. Walker came right after Leroy. So
okay, well, that's good to know.
yeah,
wondered.
I wanted to give you that bit of history,
sure.
that bit of information, because we've been talking about the history of this building and the history of the high school. So
That's really neat.
yeah. So now that you're the principal, following someone that's done a great job, you've got, you know, a well-established high school there. What do you see some of the strengths that the high school have? What makes Marshfield a better school system or a better high school than another school, in your opinion?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we're probably not super objective, right? But we talk a lot about how it does just feel different in Marshfield, and it's difficult to quantify what that means exactly. But I think it is a lot about the community, and it is just a unique feel of, um, it's so supportive, and overall, everyone rallies behind the school system, and people come to athletic events and they want to be in the schools and want to be involved and have a vested interest in it, and it feels more hands-on and more involved than I think it seems like a lot of places are. So I'm thankful for that, and I think where we are in Marshfield across the district, staff and student wise right now, feels the most consistent and the most collaborative, and just there's just a good feeling, a good spirit among all buildings right now, and it's really neat. It just feels different.
That has to start at the top, I would think,
100%.
with the superintendent, assistant superintendents, and then of course the principals, and then I think we have a good school board.
100%.
I think we
yes,
have a great school board right now, and you know, when you look at the past history, there's not always been the collaboration, the team effort that we have today, with people getting along like they always, you know, seem to anymore. And so, you know, you got to give credit to where credit's due. And I think you have great leadership.
You too.
What concerns do you see out there that you've, you know, again, you're stepping into a new role? Even though you had a great predecessor, you're still going to see some things you want to do your way. You were trained in a different way, or your education's a little different than what Mr. Curley's might have been. So what concerns do you see, or what areas do you want to see to place some extra effort into?
Well, I think, and I mean, we talked about this as an admin team last year too. So there's always, while we do have that community support, there's always room for more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to continue to bridge that gap between, especially at the high school level. I think sometimes students get older and parents feel like they don't need to be as involved, and while that's true to some extent, we still want them in the building and want them involved and want them to have that interest in each kid's education and activities. So I think that's one of our big goals as a team in our building currently, is just what are some things we can do to continue to up that engagement. But ultimately a thing that has been the philosophy as long as Mr. Curley's been in the building, and long, long before that, was just it's always about the kids, right? It's about, if we come in this building each day and we truly care about kids and we're here for the right reason and we love those kids, then a lot of the other pieces are going to fall into place.
Right.
Parents are going to feel that, kids are going to feel that, and some of that engagement is going to come naturally. So those things won't ever change.
Absolutely. And do you see, because the attention span today of, I'm not going to say just kids, I mean people in general, my attention span isn't like it used to be, do you think because of that and the potential boredom that people have today with the traditional classroom or whatever it might be, just the way learning, the way educating students has had to change, do you think that that's a pretty big challenge? That's something that you probably have to deal with, going more online, letting students work more on their own time, whatever it might be. Is that something that's still, you haven't conquered yet?
Yeah, I don't think you ever fully conquer anything, right? Education is
Yeah.
always evolving, and as you said, it does look very different than it did, even 10 years
Yeah.
ago. So yes, we are continuing to think about ways that we can be really innovative with, more workplace readiness, and obviously recognition that not all students choose college as a path, and that's great. Whatever that path is for each student, we need to try to serve each student as best we can.
Sure.
And so, Cami Harrison has been instrumental in developing an apprenticeship program, and so she's added several pathways, so to speak, in that this year, which give kids great opportunities to walk out of school with all kinds of credits, but also walking into a job and at a higher pay level than they would if they hadn't had that experience. And so, looking at expanding some of those career and technical education platforms is a goal. So we're doing a lot of learning and research and watching other schools and seeing some of the innovative things that they're doing and trying to always evolve in that area.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Um, I know when I was in the legislature, we studied and dealt with a lot of education issues and had a lot come before us. I know free and reduced lunch and all of those numbers that are used to help determine the profile of your students. And I know, is that still something we still have a high free and reduced lunch population? I mean,
Yes.
and so that kind of tells you the economic aspect of some of the families, and that's got to still be something that's, you have to place a lot more attention there in some cases, because they may not be getting the attention at home like they should be.
Yeah, I think there are some students who come to school as their safe place, and so that's just always a goal, is making sure that every student who walks in those doors, they feel like that they have a safe space.
Sure.
And that their needs are met, and that we try to provide as many resources to the community to help as we can. We started last year, I believe. There was a great team who started the Family J Nights that happen several times a year. And so the first one is September 23rd of this year. But just again, another sort of outreach to help give resources to families, because we recognize everybody's busy and everybody's running in a lot of different directions, and nobody wants to have any moments as a parent, I think, that feel like a failure sort of moment. So the more that we can help provide resources and bridge some of that gap is always a goal.
That's great. Another thing I've noticed too, in the last 20 years even, is, the support that you get from the community via TLC, backpack programs, the free and reduced lunch money. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we do today that we didn't maybe do 20, 30 years ago to help students.
Yes.
The support through the school foundation and the donations that are for scholarships, teachers grants. It's not all taxpayer money that we rely on. We rely on a lot of support from the community. When you look at the old annuals, the retrospects, the Blue Jay, in the old days they called it the Blue Jay, and then it became the retrospect in 1949, by the way, just for a little bit of history. But you look at the advertisers, those and there's more advertisers in 1949 annual or book than there probably is in today's book. I mean, it might have been $5 or something back then, but there's a lot of community support and has been over the years. That's got to be rewarding to know that you know, the booster clubs, you know, the athletic booster clubs, they're doing so much for the students. It's got to be helpful.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think to circle back to one of the questions you asked earlier, I mean, that's one of the pieces that makes this community different. Not every
culture.
community has that.
That's
and
right.
yeah, nobody bats an eye. I mean, you mentioned TLC, like there's you know, you ask for something and they don't question.
Yeah.
It's yes, there's a student need.
Yeah.
We're going to provide that. And it's every business, every organization that supports the school, it's incredible. And when we started senior project several years ago, it was the same kind of thing, you know, just community members jumping on board, businesses jumping on board to sponsor kids and to help them and help kids pursue a passion or pursue a dream that they had. And that's really neat to see because I don't think that's normal everywhere.
I think you're probably right. How many kids are in the high school?
960-ish.
Getting close to 1,000.
Yes.
Probably never been 1,000 before, has it?
I don't know. It might have been at some point, but I don't remember it
Yeah.
in my time there. So.
Yeah. Wow, 960 kids you're responsible for every day.
Yeah, when you
How's
put
that
it
make
that
you
way,
feel?
when you really think about it, it can feel like
When
a lot. But
Those parents put those kids on a school bus at
Mhm.
6 or 6:30 in the morning, and they won't see them until 5 or 5:30 that afternoon. And pretty much, Nicki Thompson, you're in charge of. You're
Well,
responsible for 'em.
my
You and
teachers,
Mr. Henry.
our teachers do a great job. So
I know, but
hopefully we can trust
no pressure
them.
here. But
Yes.
I mean, it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
People don't think about that.
Mhm.
They don't think about that.
Yeah, it does. It can feel like a pretty heavy weight sometimes when you really start to think about that, and just the safety and the responsibility of just providing a quality education for each student. It can feel like a lot, but then you think about, you know, you do have a team. You mentioned Mr. Henry, and
Yeah.
you know, our central office staff is second to none, just supportive, and our entire district admin team very connected and supportive. And then just you hire great people, right? Who you trust, teachers who
Right.
are amazing and
How many
do it for
teachers
the right
do you? How many
reasons.
teachers do you have?
72.
72
Mhm.
teachers, 960 students, and then support staff.
Yeah, we're at 103, I think.
103.
Total.
Now listen to those numbers: 103, 72, 960. Wow. How in the world can you? You know, when you think about that, I've been a manager, and I've had half of 450 that I've been responsible for as a co-manager in a super center. You know, 250 people. That's a lot of people, but it's not 11 or 1,200, and 960 of them weren't students, kids.
Mhm.
It's amazing. It really is. How do you? What's Marshfield's graduation rate? How do you guys, you know, measure that? Is that something that's getting better? Is it worse? Are we in the middle? Are we above average? How does that work?
So we've gone up a little bit in the past couple of years. Stayed pretty consistent though, but you know, the measurement changes a little bit based on state requirements and things
Sure.
like that. But we have gotten more intentional about some of those workplace readiness pieces,
Sure.
like I said, that continue to support some of the goals that students have post graduation. And so I think that has helped meet more student needs and help
Alternative
with that.
school help a
So
little there too.
it does, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we have a great extension center.
So would it be 90%?
Yeah, you're gonna ask me numbers. And
That's okay. I'm just curious. You know,
That's
what will
what
you
the
graduate?
exact
200? Will you
numbers,
graduate 200 students
yeah,
maybe?
around about
So
that, depending on the year.
I was just kind of curious. And then what about test scores? How do we rate there? Is that
So
something?
that's been an interesting thing because, you know, we moved to the 4-day week, right? And so that was a concern, I would say, of some of what's going to do to assessment scores when you're not in school as much. And
Right.
obviously test scores aren't everything, but they matter when it comes to
Sure.
state ranking and funding and all the pieces.
Yeah.
So our test scores have, if you look at the graphs over the years, they've gone consistently up. And with the past couple of years of 4-day weeks, they've been in most content areas across the district, at grade levels across the district have been higher than they ever have been. So
that's a good thing.
it's a great
So
thing.
we're on a
Yes.
we're on a good trend right now.
Yes, and I think
Good,
it's
good.
all due to how we have structured 4-day weeks, which, you know, our central office administrators get full credit on that and being really intentional about what that move looks like. And as you know, 4-day weeks are getting some criticism statewide
Yeah,
right
what's your
now.
thought on
But
that? I don't, and you know, just in general, you don't have to. I'm not going to nail you down. I'm just curious. How's it working?
so my personal philosophy and view in our district is it's working great. Like I said, we were really intentional about what that structure looks like. And so we spent an entire semester to a year planning curriculum wise before we ever even made
Yeah.
that move. So, figuring out these are our standards and what we need to, this is the amount of time we have. We only have 4 days. So we're being really intentional about every single minute, of every single class period, and what that's going to look like and how we're meeting those standards. And so I think since teachers had the opportunity to collaborate on that and think about that intentionally, that's made a big difference. And then I think our Monday structure is unique too, because not all 4-day districts have this. So what that structure looks like is every other Monday, teachers are on campus, and the morning from 8 to noon is collaborative PLC time. So in that time, teachers are meeting in their grade level or content groups, and they are planning, they are looking at assessments that they have given, formative assessments, and looking at student performance, figuring out, reflecting, how do we make this better? Where did, this teacher across the table for me, they did this a lot better than I did. So what can I do next time to do this more effectively? So that collaborative piece is everything. And having the time to do it is what makes the difference. Because before we had that, but it was before or after school, or, quick minutes where you could fit it in. And it wasn't that just block of time. It was intentional where you sit down and you really focus and work through that. And then teachers have in the afternoon from 1 to 3, they have that time to just be in their classrooms and work and do what they need to do. And I think that has helped too, because there's less. I mean, teachers, we know they're always going to be taking things home. It's just unfortunately how education is. It's not just that contract time that you're there in the classroom, but it has, I think, given back some time because we have that dedicated time to work and collaborate. So it's made a difference.
Good. So it's quality over quantity. I mean, this would be one way to summarize that. But I think doesn't the launch program, the online school kind of all complement that? I mean, if you don't need the classroom time as much, then with online, you've got that can be done anytime. So that's good. Let's talk about building projects. You've got quite a bit going on in the district. Talk a little bit about your specific projects there on your campus.
Yeah, so we have an ag expansion, so that's happening right outside the ag shop, and it's going to be a really neat facility that'll be done later this year. And so there's several classrooms in there, a meat processing plant. So
stop right there. Say that again. A meat processing plant.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I mean, what a great learning experience for people to do that. I mean anybody that shoots deer, goes after deer hunter. I mean, they could that's something that they could use the rest of their life, couldn't they?
Yeah, for sure. And
that's
I think
awesome.
Again, that just speaks to giving kids opportunities to learn new skills and to walk out of high school with all of these tools. And so I think this expansion will be really instrumental in providing more and more opportunities and skills.
See connections to food pantries there. There's all kinds of things.
There's all kinds of things. Our ag teachers are starting to plan and plot, and they've got some creative ideas. So it'll be neat to see that roll out.
It's great to see the ag departments expand and get attention. I mean, number one industry in Missouri. It is. And so that's really, I really support that. And it's pretty phenomenal what the VOAG departments do now in today's times. And the number of kids that are involved in VOAG.
Yeah, it's a huge program.
Girls, boys, whoever, there's a lot of great opportunities there.
Yes, and I was talking to one of our ag teachers last week, I guess, and he said, it's neat because we continue to evolve as ag teachers. Of back maybe even just a few years ago, it was, well, if you're in these classes, you probably are going to go work on the farm and take over a business or something. It may not necessarily be that now, but the skills that you are going to learn here can transfer to anything and give you a greater appreciation for the industry in general. And so I think that it's neat to kind of see how that evolves and still has a place, very much so, whether you are going to take over the family farm or just transfer those skills to other pieces.
And so you got ag expansion. What else?
So right between us and Shook Elementary, there is a multi-purpose room and storm shelter that is being built. So that'll be able to be utilized for lots of things and just great extra space. On the other campus, there is a wrestling facility that will be a great place because are out of space.
Mm,
There's a
train-
lot of shared
training for-
space, right? So this will be nice to give them that dedicated space, and it's a program that continues to grow to junior high and high school wise. So it'll be neat for them to have that.
Good deal. Football boys won last night.
They did, yes, a great start to the season for sure.
It's always good to win the first game.
Yes,
Yeah,
a little bit worried about the lightning delay, but
Yeah.
we got the game in, and
that's
it was
good.
good.
That's good. Little bit of a fun thing. So we talked for a minute before the show began about the debate on whether we're the Marshfield Blue Jays or the Marshfield Blue Jays, right?
Yes.
So if you want to rely on precedent and history, if you look at the old, prior to the retrospect, the annual was called the Blue Jay, not the Blue Jay. And then this was 1948, which happened to be the year my father graduated. But in 49, then we went to the retrospect. Okay, so prior to that, the Blue Jay. So I vote for Blue Jay. Steve Aarons, if you're watching, one of Marshfield's most famous journalists, the publisher of the Missouri Blue Book for many years ago. Steve, we support your stance on this.
Yes.
We're the Blue Jays. Nicki, comments?
Yes, I agree. I think maybe it goes back to a Steve Aarons nod of him posting something on Facebook probably about how this is two words, and it caused me to do some research, and that was my take as well.
Right.
So,
and I'm sure Jack Waters is who taught him or
probably, yeah.
helped train him to look at it from that perspective as well. So if the Waters family says it's the Blue Jays, that's good enough for me.
Decision made. Great.
Well, that's awesome. Well, you know what? Time flies. It really does. We've got about 10 minutes left, and it's a great time to just talk about whatever you want to. What about, are you still riding any horses?
Not as much as I would like to.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I have two horses at my house.
Do you
but
have two still? Yeah.
They're older, and so they're not completely sound anymore. So
yeah.
it's kind of expensive pasture ornaments at this point. But
You did a lot of riding growing up, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I think that's probably what I would credit with getting me into education in the first place.
Really?
I started riding at Hartman Farms when I was 10,
Uh-huh.
and then my instructor was awesome, and she and then the Hartmans gave me opportunities to start helping with some of the lesson programs. So that looked like catching horses and getting them saddled and ready for lessons, and then that evolved to Leah Cunningham out Lofton and me teaching lessons together in high school, and then doing camps and Boy Scout and Girl Scout programs and Springfield Park Board programs that came out to do their.
I don't guess I even realized you taught. I mean, I knew you rode all the time, but that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
so I did that until probably about 10 years ago, and so that was a great experience all around, and I think that's what led me to teaching when I really think back on that. And so I was pretty against the idea of going into education for my whole life. People told me even as a kid, I think you should go into education. I said, no, I will never do that. And here we are. So
well, you found a way to really utilize your ability to the not journalism, the English ability, you know. I mean, someone has to have it's almost like being an athlete, you know. You got to have a knack for that. You got to really be a good book reader, you know, and to become a good English person, you know, and you've certainly accomplished all that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't have the Webster County drawl like I do either. There's got to be a reason.
I don't know. Maybe. That's funny.
What else is you want to talk about before we sign off? I really appreciate this. It's incredible to be able to have, again, someone that grew up in our community, that is well educated, that is just an outstanding person. As I mentioned in our invitation, just a nice, kind person. And you know, I think about a handful of those people that I know, and you're right in there with them. And it's just great to have people that are always pleasant and always accommodating and say the right thing and do the right thing. And we need more people like that.
I think you're being too generous, but I
Well,
appreciate that. So,
so what else would you like to accomplish as high school principal? I mean,
mhm.
what do you foresee in the future? What do you see down the road? Do you see Marshfield School continuing to grow? I think Mr. Henry mentioned that the population has sort of leveled off for a little bit,
Yeah.
but we've got 200 houses coming into town here in the next
Mhm.
few years in one particular subdivision. Um, what do you see in your career? I mean, you're just beginning your principal career, so
Mhm.
by the time you're ready to retire, how will you see it then?
Yeah, so I do think with some of the housing developments that are coming in that we hopefully will grow some. And like I said, I really want to continue to focus on opportunities for kids. So whatever that looks like, continuing to evolve and have that workplace readiness strand and just opportunities for kids to pursue interests and passion projects. And our mission statement is to prepare each student for a successful future. And I think that can sound cliche, but I think that's really what we're trying to do is think about a future that is continually evolving. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like always, but just making sure we give kids the skills, the opportunities, and um, just let them pursue those passions that they will walk out of our school and feel like they can be successful and
Sure.
have those tools. So,
Do you think there's anything new on the horizon out there? Like, if we were having this conversation 20 years ago or 30
mhm,
years ago, we wouldn't even really know about a CNC machine.
right.
You know, the internet was just in its infancy. Uh, do you what do you see in any of your classes you've taken about the future or whatever the growth of education?
Hmm.
Is there something out there that you could share with the public about what you might see things will look like that looks
Hmm.
differently than it does today?
Yeah, so I think it's tough, right? Because it is changing so often, but there is discussion, and I'm not saying this is what's happening
Yeah,
in Marshfield,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But there is discussion in the larger education field about places where, we don't have the traditional school day, so to speak, with, 47-minute class periods or whatever that might be, and
Traditional
where,
classroom.
right,
Yeah,
where students are just doing the work, meeting the competencies, whatever that might be, to pursue this project or this pathway to this career or some of the apprenticeship pieces. So I think there's opportunity to reimagine that what that school day looks like, and we've made some progress in those areas. But really, when you think back, I mean, the school day structure hasn't changed significantly.
yeah,
But our society has changed quite a bit.
yeah.
So there's discussion about should that structure change to meet some of the societal shifts too.
Will teachers evolve into becoming a little more um, like coaches as
Hmm.
opposed to you know standing before a whiteboard
Sure.
doing math formulas? I mean,
Yes.
it's more like making sure students, well, like YouTube. Let's
Hmm.
face it, YouTube has been a phenomenal teacher.
Hmm.
Phenomenal teacher. My boys have learned to put engines in their car on YouTube.
Right.
I'm not an engine mechanic. I'm a carpenter, sort of, but I'm not an engine mechanic. But anything they do, you just go to YouTube and then it tells you how to do. Put a
Right.
new hose on your washing machine.
Yep.
So phenomenal teacher.
Mhm.
So how, there's got to be ways that can be incorporated into the general education
Yes.
somehow.
And I think we have largely made that shift or are always in, the process of making that shift of going from that teacher as giver of knowledge to teacher as facilitator of curiosity and exploration. And so I think our teachers do a great job with that and being open to continually evolving in that, which is a tough thing because if they've been in education for a long time, that looks pretty different from how education looked when they came into the picture. But it is very different because there's less need to teach direct facts when why would you why would you need to memorize that necessarily when you can ask Siri that, right?
Exactly.
So it is more just can you solve a problem in front of you when you're presented with that? Can you find resources to help you with something? Do you have that natural curiosity where you want to learn more and know more? And can you talk to people? Which is back to the social media
Yeah.
piece, right? Can
That's
you have a conversation? Can you work through, any conflict that comes up? And so thinking about can we teach those skills and be more intentional about that in each of our areas as the students work toward projects and things like that. Goal.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be exciting,
Mm-hmm.
but it also is a little scary
Yeah.
to think about where that's all going. And um, I do think that we do need to somehow learn through social media, though, to tone it down just a bit and
Agree.
return to the days of social etiquette
Mm-hmm.
and diplomacy
Mm-hmm.
and all those things that we were taught at home uh, growing up before we entered kindergarten. A lot of those real basic elementary deals that are things that our parents taught us, you know, don't say anything bad about anybody. If you can't,
Mm-hmm.
if you can't say something good, don't say anything bad.
Right.
I mean, all those little things. We got to somehow figure out a way to remember and implement those back in society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and talking to people and
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you one thing. I wanted to end with this, and I thought about this when I'd asked you to come on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can agree or disagree with it, but it's exactly what she told me. So when I was running the Walmart store back in the '90s, your grandmother Thompson came in one day, and she'd been my teacher, and I loved her. She was a great teacher. She wasn't an entertainer. She was a teacher. You had to listen, but you would learn. But she was a history teacher, which I was a history person. And I can't remember the exact situation that was going on, but this would have been from '97 to '04. So it was way after Desert Storm, but there was some conflict going on
Mm-hmm.
over the other side of the world. And she and I were talking about that, and I asked her her opinion of it or something. And she said, well, it all depends on the mothers of those people.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about how those children are going to be raised. And I always thought about that, how true that is.
Yes.
It's how the children and their perspective of how things were going to be and how they were being taught and raised.
Mm-hmm.
And that, what a great correlation to what you all do as teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it does start before they even come to the school.
It does.
At home. So, but your grandma Pat Thompson told me that.
That's neat.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, it's that time, believe it or not. This has been great. I appreciate your time. I know it's hard to take an hour out of some 2 hours in our case because we visited a little bit before, but out of your busy Saturday, and I know you have to go. Is it one of the
volleyball supervision? So I was there before and going back. So.
No rest for the
weary. They won earlier, so
well, great. No rest for the weary. So thank you, and we're proud of you. And listen, you've got a community behind you. Don't hesitate to ask if you need anything. If you have problems someday and the gym power goes out and you need to use the old gym, you just call me, okay?
Thank you so much.
We've always got availability to help out anytime we can for the schools. We've been great partners, and we really appreciate what you do for our kids.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate you too.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you all. We will see you again hopefully next week. So we're still lining up some guests. So thanks.